She lived a life where love was scarce and cruelty was all she knew. Her stepmother's hatred left scars no one could see, until one fateful day, everything changed.
Before you continue, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this powerful story.
The air inside the car felt different. Grace sat quietly beside Daniel, her hands folded tightly on her lap, her fingers trembling slightly. Outside the window, the city moved fast, cars honking, people walking confidently, buildings rising tall into the sky. Everything felt unfamiliar. Everything felt too big for her. Daniel glanced at her and smiled softly. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Grace forced a small smile, but her eyes betrayed her. "I'm fine," she whispered, but she wasn't. Her heart was beating too fast. Today she was going to meet his family. The gates opened slowly. Grace's eyes widened. Before her stood a mansion so grand it didn't feel real. The compound was spotless, surrounded by tall fences and shining cars parked neatly like soldiers on duty. Her breath caught. People like me don't belong here. She looked down at her simple dress, suddenly aware of every thread, every crease, every imperfection. Daniel noticed. He reached for her hand. "Hey," he said softly, "you belong wherever I am." Those words touched something deep inside her, but the fear didn't leave. Inside the house, everything sparkled. The floors reflected light like mirrors. The walls carried paintings she couldn't even understand. The air smelled fresh, expensive, like a different world entirely. Grace felt small, very small. Footsteps approached. Her heart stopped. Daniel's parents walked into the room, elegant, composed, powerful. Grace quickly stood up, her head slightly bowed. "Good afternoon, sir." "Ma," she said respectfully, her voice shaking. There was silence, a long, heavy silence. Grace's chest tightened. She could feel their eyes on her, studying her, measuring her, judging her. Then, Daniel's mother stepped closer. Grace held her breath. "You are Grace?" she asked calmly. "Yes, Ma," Grace replied, almost whispering. Another pause. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel's mother smiled. A soft, genuine smile. "You're welcome," she said. Grace blinked. She wasn't sure she heard correctly. Daniel's father nodded slowly. "Any girl who can raise a son like ours from danger deserves respect." Grace's eyes widened in shock. Respect for her? Her chest tightened, not with fear this time, but emotion. Tears almost escaped her eyes, but she held them back. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. They sat together, they talked. Daniel spoke proudly about her, how she saved his life, how strong she was, how kind her heart was. Grace kept her head slightly lowered, overwhelmed, but something inside her began to warm. Maybe, just maybe, this life wasn't too far from her reach. But peace never lasts long for someone like Grace. The moment she stepped back into her house that evening, everything changed. The door slammed behind her. "Where are you coming from?" Her stepmother's voice cut through the air like a blade. Grace froze. I went out," she said softly. Her stepmother stepped closer, eyes burning with anger. "With whom?" Grace hesitated. That was enough. A loud slap landed across her face. Grace stumbled backward, holding her cheek, tears instantly forming. "You think you can fool me?" her stepmother shouted. "Running around with rich boys now? Trying to disgrace me?" Grace shook her head quickly. "No, please, it's not like that. Shut up!" Her stepmother pushed her violently. "You think because someone with money looked at you, you are now important?" Her voice lowered, darker now, more dangerous. "Listen to me carefully." She leaned closer, her eyes cold. "You will never see that boy again." Grace's heart dropped. Silence filled the room, heavy, suffocating. Grace slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were filled with tears. But something else was there too. Strength. I didn't do anything wrong, she said quietly. Her stepmother's face hardened. You dare talk back to me? Grace quickly lowered her gaze again. I'm sorry, she whispered, but deep inside, her heart was breaking. That night, Grace lay on her small bed, staring at the ceiling. Tears rolled silently into her ears. She remembered the mansion, the kindness, the way Daniel looked at her. And now, this. Pain, fear, control. She turned to her side, hugging herself tightly. Why is my life always like this? In another part of the city. Daniel stood by his window, looking out into the night. Something didn't feel right. He could feel it. Grace's silence, her fear earlier, it haunted him. He clenched his fist. No, he muttered. I won't let anything hurt her. Back in the dark room, Grace wiped her tears. Her voice was barely a whisper. God, please, help me. Outside her door, her stepmother stood quietly, listening. Her face slowly twisted into a cold smile. So, this is how it begins, she whispered. If I can't stop this now, I will lose everything. Her eyes darkened. I won't let that happen. Inside the room, Grace closed her eyes, unaware that her love was about to face its greatest battle yet. The morning sun rose gently over the city, but for Grace, it felt like the beginning of something she had never known before. Hope. Grace stood outside her house, holding the edge of her faded dress, her eyes fixed on the road. She didn't know why her heart was beating so fast. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was excitement, or maybe it was both. Then she saw it. A sleek black car slowly pulled up in front of her. Her breath caught, the door opened. Daniel stepped out. Dressed in a clean-fitted shirt and polished shoes, he looked like he belonged to a world she had only ever seen from a distance. But the way he smiled at her felt close, familiar, safe. Good morning, Grace, he said softly. Grace lowered her gaze shyly. Good morning. Her voice was almost a whisper. Inside the car, everything felt quiet again, but this time, it wasn't fear alone, it was anticipation. Grace kept looking around, touching the seat gently, watching the buildings pass by. She had never been this far from her world before. Where are we going? She finally asked. Daniel smiled. You'll see. Moments later, the car stopped. Grace stepped out slowly and froze. Before her stood a massive shopping mall. Tall glass walls, bright lights, people walking confidently in beautiful clothes. Her heart began to race again. This place, she whispered. I've never been here before. Daniel watched her carefully. I know, he said gently. That's why I brought you. Inside the mall, Grace felt like she had stepped into another universe. Everything shined, everything sparkled. Everywhere she turned, she saw beauty she had never imagined. Mannequins dressed like royalty, shoes lined up like art, mirrors reflecting a version of life she had never lived. She walked slowly, almost afraid to touch anything. Daniel, this place is too expensive, she said nervously. I don't belong here. Daniel stopped walking. He turned to her, his expression softened. Grace, he said quietly, stop saying that. She looked up at him. You deserve good things too. Her heart trembled. No one had ever said that to her before. Inside a clothing store, Daniel picked out a beautiful dress, soft fabric, elegant design, something Grace had only dreamed of wearing. Try this, he said. Grace hesitated. Me? He smiled. Yes, you. Moments later, Grace stepped out of the changing room, and everything stopped. She looked different. The dress fit her perfectly. Her posture changed. Her face glowed. For a moment, she didn't look like the girl who suffered. She looked like someone powerful, someone worthy. Daniel stared at her, speechless. A slow smile spread across his face. You're beautiful, he said softly. Grace's cheeks flushed. She looked down, overwhelmed. Tears almost came, but this time they weren't from pain. The day continued like a dream. Shoes, clothes, a small handbag, and finally, a phone. Grace held it carefully, like it might disappear if she wasn't gentle enough. "With this," Daniel said, "I can always reach you." Her eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. For the first time in her life, Grace felt seen, valued, important. But deep inside her heart, a quiet fear whispered, "This happiness won't last." As evening approached, they returned home. The car stopped in front of her house. The same broken walls, the same dusty ground, the same reality. Grace stepped out slowly, holding the small bag tightly. Daniel looked at her. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I'm here." She nodded, but something inside her still felt uneasy. She entered the house. Silence. Too much silence. Her stepmother sat in the corner, watching, waiting. Her eyes moved slowly from Grace's face to the bag in her hand. Something dark flashed across her expression. "Where did you get those?" she asked coldly. Grace swallowed. "Daniel gave them to me." The room changed instantly. Her stepmother stood up, her face twisted with anger. "So it's true," she said slowly. "You think you're better than me now?" No, that's not it." Grace tried to explain, but it was too late. Her stepmother walked forward and snatched the bag from her hand. Grace gasped, "Please!" But her stepmother had already opened it. Her eyes widened at the sight of the clothes, the shoes, the phone. Jealousy burned in her eyes. Hot, dangerous. "You don't deserve any of this," she snapped. Grace's heart broke instantly. "Please, he gave them to me." Her stepmother laughed bitterly. "And that's exactly why you won't keep them." One by one, she threw the items onto the ground. The dress, the shoes, the phone, like they meant nothing, like Grace meant nothing. Tears streamed down Grace's face, but she didn't fight back. She just stood there, watching her happiness scatter across the floor. Her stepmother stepped closer. "You are nothing," she said coldly. "Don't forget where you came from." Grace slowly knelt down, picking up the clothes with trembling hands. Her tears dropped onto the fabric, soft, silent, painful. That night, she lay on her bed again, but this time it felt different, because now she had seen another life, touched it, felt it, and lost it, all in one day. She held the phone tightly to her chest, the only thing her stepmother didn't notice, a small light in a world of darkness. Her eyes filled with tears, but her lips moved slowly. "Thank you," she whispered, not to her stepmother, not to the world, but to God. Outside, the wind blew softly, carrying with it a silent promise. This was only the beginning. The room was silent, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that pressed heavily on the chest, the kind that made it hard to breathe. Grace remained on her knee, her hands trembling as she gathered the clothes from the dusty floor. Each piece felt heavier than it should, not because of the fabric, but because of what they meant. Hope, a new beginning, a different life. And now they were all lying in the dirt behind her. Her stepmother stood still, watching, her arms folded, her face hard, cold, unmoved. "You think you can become something overnight?" she said sharply. Grace didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat felt tight, her voice lost somewhere between pain and fear. "I warned you," her stepmother continued, stepping closer. Each step echoed like a threat. "You will not bring shame into this house." Grace slowly picked up the dress Daniel had given her. Her fingers gently brushed the fabric, as if trying to protect it from more damage. Tears dropped onto it, soft, silent. "I am talking to you," her stepmother shouted. Grace flinched. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That only made things worse." "Sorry?" Her stepmother laughed bitterly. Is sorry going to change who you are? Her eyes scanned Grace from head to toe. Disgust filled her face. You are nothing, she said coldly, and you will always be nothing. Those words cut deeper than any slap. Grace froze. For a moment, even her tears stopped, because something inside her heart cracked. Her stepmother suddenly bent down and snatched the phone from Grace's hand. Grace gasped. No, please. But it was too late. This is how he controls you, isn't it? Her stepmother snapped. Grace shook her head desperately. No, it's not like that. Then you won't need it. She raised the phone slightly, as if thinking. Grace's heart pounded loudly. Please, she begged softly. But her stepmother only smirked. Then she turned and walked away with it. Grace's body went still. Her hands dropped slowly to her lap. The last piece of connection gone. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Grace didn't know. She remained on the floor, surrounded by what used to be her happiness. Eventually, she stood up slowly, her legs weak, her body tired, her heart heavier than ever. She folded the clothes carefully, even though they had been thrown like trash. She treated them like treasure, because to her, they still were. That night, the house was quiet again, but this time it felt colder. Grace lay on her bed, her eyes open, staring into darkness. She replayed everything in her mind. Daniel's smile, his voice, the way he looked at her like she mattered. Then, her stepmother's words, "You are nothing." A tear slid down her face, then another, then many more. She turned to her side, hugging herself tightly, as if trying to hold the pieces of her broken heart together. Maybe she's right, she whispered. The words felt heavy, painful, dangerous, but then a memory surfaced. Daniel's voice. You deserve good things too. Grace's eyes closed tightly, her brows furrowed. Two voices, two worlds, fighting inside her. I don't know who I am anymore, she cried softly. Outside, the night wind blew gently, carrying distant sounds of life continuing, people laughing, talking, living. But inside that small room, Grace felt alone, completely alone. Suddenly, a soft knock came at the door. Grace sat up quickly. Her heart skipped. Who is it? She asked cautiously. No answer. She stood up slowly and walked toward the door, each step careful, uncertain. She opened it slightly. No one. But something was on the ground, a small object. Her eyes widened. It was her phone. She quickly picked it up, confused, surprised. She looked around. Nothing, only darkness. Her heart began to race again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something else, something stronger. She closed the door gently, held the phone close to her chest. Tears filled her eyes again, but now they were different. Maybe, she whispered, maybe I'm not nothing. Far away, Daniel stood outside his car, looking toward the direction of her house, his face serious, his eyes filled with determination. I won't give up on you, Grace, he said quietly, no matter what. Back in her room, Grace wiped her tears. Her breathing steadied, her heart still hurting, but no longer empty. Because deep inside, a small light still remained, and no matter how hard the darkness tried, it refused to go out. The afternoon sun hung high in the sky, but inside Grace's heart, there was a storm. She moved quietly around the house, sweeping the floor with slow, tired movements. Her face looked calm, but her mind was not. Since the night her phone was returned, something had changed. A small courage had begun to grow inside her, fragile, but real. Suddenly, a knock. Grace froze. The broom slipped slightly from her hand. Her heart began to race. No one ever came here. Not for her. Another knock. Stronger this time. She walked slowly toward the door, each step filled with uncertainty, hope, and fear. She opened it, and her breath stopped. Daniel. He stood there, calm, confident, but his eyes carried something serious, something determined. "Can I come in?" he asked gently. Grace stepped aside immediately. "Yes, please." Her voice was soft, but her heart was loud. Inside the house, Daniel looked around briefly. The same worn walls, the same broken furniture, the same life Grace had been trapped in. His jaw tightened slightly. He turned to her. "I didn't come here by accident," he said. Grace looked up at him, her brows slightly furrowed. "I came to speak with your stepmother." Her heart skipped. "She's not home," Grace replied quietly. For a moment, there was silence. Daniel nodded slowly. "That's okay," he said. "I'll say it to you first." Grace's chest tightened. Something about his tone made her nervous. Daniel stepped closer, not too close, just enough for her to feel the weight of his presence. "Grace," his voice softened. "I love you." The words hit her like a wave. Her breath caught, her eyes widened. "I've seen your strength," he continued, "your kindness, your heart. You're not what they say you are. You are more." Tears filled Grace's eyes instantly. Her lips trembled. "And I don't want to just watch your life from a distance," Daniel said. "I want to be part of it." He paused, then said the words that would change everything. "I want to marry you." The room fell silent. Grace stood frozen. Her heart pounded so loudly it felt like the whole world could hear it. "Marry me?" she whispered. Daniel nodded. "Yes." Tears rolled down her cheeks, not from pain, but from something deeper, something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Happiness. "I don't have anything," she said softly. "No family, no status." Daniel stepped closer. "You have everything that matters." For a moment, Grace forgot the world, forgot the pain, forgot the fear. But reality never stays quiet for long. The door burst open. Grace jumped. Her heart dropped instantly. Her stepmother stood at the entrance, her eyes scanning the room, then landing on Daniel. Silence. Deadly silence. "What is he doing here?" she demanded sharply. Grace stepped back slightly. "He came to—" "I asked you!" her stepmother snapped, pointing at Daniel. Daniel remained calm. He stepped forward respectfully. "Good afternoon, Ma," he said. "I came to speak with you." Her stepmother laughed bitterly. "You came into my house without permission, and you think I will listen to you?" "I mean no disrespect," Daniel replied calmly. "I came because I care about Grace." Her expression darkened instantly. "Care?" she repeated. "You call this care?" Grace's heart began to race again. She knew this was going to turn bad, very bad. Daniel didn't back down. "I love her," he said clearly, "and I want to marry her." The words echoed in the room like thunder. For a second, everything went still. Then her stepmother exploded. "Out!" she screamed. "Get out of my house!" Grace flinched. Daniel stood his ground. "You don't understand," he began. "I said get out!" she shouted, stepping forward aggressively. Her anger filled the room like fire. "You think you can just walk in here and take her?" she continued. "She is nothing." Grace's eyes filled with tears again, but this time something inside her resisted. Daniel looked at her stepmother, his expression firm. "She is not nothing." That only made things worse. "Leave now," her stepmother said coldly, "or I will make you regret stepping into this house." There was a moment of tension, heavy, dangerous. Then Daniel exhaled slowly. He turned to Grace. Their eyes met. "I'm not giving up," he said quietly, "no matter what." Grace's heart shook. Then he walked toward the door and left. Silence followed, but it didn't last long. The moment the door closed, her stepmother turned to Grace. "What have you done?" she shouted. Tears streamed down Grace's face. "I didn't invite him. He came to disgrace me," her stepmother yelled. "No, he came because he—" "Stop talking!" Grace went silent immediately. Her stepmother stepped closer, her eyes filled with anger. And something darker. You think you can marry into wealth? She said coldly. You think you can leave me behind? Grace shook her head weakly. I never said that. But her stepmother didn't believe her. You will never marry him, she said firmly. Never. Those words echoed deeply. Grace's heart broke again. But this time, something inside her didn't fully collapse, because now she had heard something stronger. I want to marry you. That night, Grace sat alone again, but she wasn't the same girl anymore. Her tears still fell, her heart still hurt, but deep inside, a quiet strength was growing, and for the first time, she began to ask herself a question. What if I don't have to stay here forever, outside? The wind rose. Inside, a war had begun. The night was heavy. A deep, suffocating darkness filled Grace's small room. The air was still, yet every corner seemed to press on her chest. She sat on the edge of her worn bed, the scattered clothes from the mall lying in the corner. Her hands clutched the small phone Daniel had returned, holding it like a lifeline. Tears streaked her cheeks, but this time they were not just for pain. They carried questions, fear, and a flicker of hope. I can't do this alone, she whispered. Her voice trembled, breaking against the oppressive silence. She pressed the phone to her chest, but it was not enough. Her heart ached. Her stepmother's words still echoed in her mind. You are nothing. But now, Grace refused to believe them completely. She knelt beside the bed, hands folded, eyes closed. For the first time she spoke not to anyone in the room, but to the God who had saved her before. Please, please give me strength, she prayed softly. Show me the way, even if it's hard. Her words trembled in the dim moonlight that seeped through the tiny window. The wind outside whispered through the cracks in the walls. A faint rustle, a subtle reminder of life continuing beyond these four corners. Grace's mind replayed Daniel's words. You deserve good things. She drew a deep breath. I deserve good things, she repeated softly to herself. Her hands gripped the blanket tightly. The heaviness in her chest began to lift slowly. A warmth began to grow in her heart. Outside, the village was silent. Inside, a new determination stirred. She opened her eyes slowly. Her gaze fell on the phone lying on the table. She picked it up, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled, just a little. Maybe, she whispered. Maybe I can fight. Maybe I can leave this behind. The night deepened. Shadows danced on the walls. Grace's heart was still racing, still fragile. But there was light in the darkness now. She sat on the floor, leaning against the bed, hugging her knees. Tears came again, but these were different. Tears of release, tears of hope, tears of prayer answered silently. For the first time, she felt the courage to imagine a new life, one where she could be free, one where she could love, one where she could live. The night stretched on, but Grace no longer feared it. Her whisper of a prayer had shifted something deep inside her. The darkness could not hold her completely, and somewhere far away, Daniel sat in his car, thinking of her, eyes full of hope. I won't give up on you, Grace, he muttered softly. No matter what it takes. Back in her room, Grace rested her head on her knees. A quiet resolve settled in her chest. The darkness was still there, but it no longer ruled her, because inside, a small light had begun to shine, and that light was stronger than any cruelty she had endured. The night was alive with shadows, each corner of the house whispering secrets. Grace sat on her bed, the small phone clutched tightly in her hands. Her heart raced, pounding in her chest, like the drumbeats of a war she had been silently fighting for years. Tonight, everything would change. She had made her decision. She would no longer stay in prison of her stepmother's cruelty. No more stolen dreams, no more despair, no more fear. Silently, she packed the few belongings she could, clothes, the phone, and a small bag of essentials she had hidden away. Every movement felt amplified in the quiet house. The creak of the floorboards made her flinch. The shadows seemed to watch her. Then a soft breeze blew through the cracked window, rustling the curtains. It was as if the night itself whispered, "Go, now." Grace tiptoed toward the door. Her steps were careful, precise. Her heart screamed with both fear and exhilaration. Outside, the village lay silent under the deep indigo of night. The only sounds were the distant barking of a dog and the whisper of leaves in the wind. She slipped through the narrow path behind the house, bare feet touching the cool earth. The moonlight revealed her small silhouette, moving swiftly yet cautiously. Suddenly, a shadow appeared. Her stepmother. Grace froze, her chest tightened, her mind raced. "Where do you think you're going?" the stepmother shouted, rage twisting her face. Grace didn't answer. She ran. The stepmother lunged, but Grace was faster. She dodged, twisting around the narrow path, adrenaline fueling every movement. Her bare feet scraped against the dirt, heart pounding louder than ever. The village seemed endless, yet for Grace, every step felt like freedom. Her breaths came in sharp bursts. Her eyes, wide with fear, glimmered with determination. Finally, the village gate appeared in the distance. Beyond it, a life she had only dreamed of. She stopped for a moment, looking back, the house, her chains, her past, all behind her. Then she ran faster, hope and courage surging like fire. A familiar voice rang out. "Grace!" It was Daniel, waiting silently by the gate, eyes filled with relief and urgency. She stumbled into his arms, collapsing slightly, tears streaming down her face. He held her tightly, whispering, "It's okay. You're safe now. I won't let anyone hurt you again." For the first time in years, Grace felt true safety, true love, true freedom. Behind them, the village slept, unaware of the silent battle that had been won. But for Grace, a new life had begun. The morning sun spilled golden light across the small countryside where Daniel had brought Grace. It was a world far removed from the dark, cramped room she had fled. Clean walls, soft sheets, and the faint aroma of fresh bread made Grace feel alive for the first time in years. Daniel held her hand as they walked through the small, well-kept home he had arranged for her. "Welcome," he said gently, smiling. "This is your new beginning, Grace." Grace's eyes glistened. She had dreamed of freedom, but reality felt almost surreal. Yet as she explored, a small knot of unease twisted in her stomach. The memory of her stepmother's cruelty lingered. She wondered if she was truly safe. That afternoon, Daniel left briefly to attend business matters, leaving Grace to explore the small village nearby. She wandered past markets filled with colorful wares, children playing and neighbors greeting her warmly. A gentle smile lit her face, the first in weeks. But shadows were never far. In the corner of the village, a man she did not recognize lingered, his gaze sharp, calculating. He scribbled notes on a small pad before disappearing down a narrow alley. Grace felt nothing, yet the feeling of being watched clung to her like a cold shadow. When Daniel returned, he noticed her unease. "What is it?" he asked softly. She shook her head, trying to smile, but tension etched her features. I just feel like someone is watching me," she admitted quietly. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He vowed silently nothing would threaten her again. That evening, as they sat together under the warm glow of lamplight, Grace reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The escape, the long nights, the prayers, and now this, a new life filled with love and hope. Yet even as she leaned against Daniel, safe and comforted, a tiny whisper of fear lingered. She knew that hidden threats were always present, sometimes even in the most beautiful beginnings. But she also knew something else. Her courage, strengthened by years of suffering, would never let her be powerless again. This new chapter had started, and she was ready to fight for it, heart, mind, and soul. The morning sun painted the village with a warm golden hue. Grace had been settling into her new life, helping Daniel with small tasks around the house and exploring the village. For the first time in years, she felt a glimpse of normalcy, but deep inside, a whisper of unease lingered. That afternoon, a letter arrived, sealed with an unfamiliar emblem. Grace's hands trembled as she took it from Daniel, who looked at her curiously. She broke the seal and unfolded the paper. Her eyes widened, heart pounding as she read the words aloud. Grace, we know where you are. Your stepmother will stop at nothing. She has secrets. Your past is not as simple as you think. Daniel's expression darkened. What do you mean? He asked, eyes narrowing. Grace shook, gripping the letter like a lifeline. I don't know, but it seems my stepmother, she's been hiding something all this time. That evening, Daniel and Grace returned to the village market to gather supplies. In the crowd, they noticed a man whispering and pointing, watching them closely. Something clicked in Grace's mind, a memory, a hidden event from her childhood, a secret her stepmother had kept buried. That night they sat together in their small home, candles flickering. Grace finally spoke, voice trembling but resolute. I think my stepmother isn't just cruel. She's planning something. Something that could take away everything I've fought for. Daniel held her hands tightly, determination burning in his eyes. Whatever it is, Grace, we'll face it together. Nothing will stop us. The letter lay on the table, its words haunting the room, shadows flickering across the walls. Grace's heart raced, but beneath the fear, a spark of courage ignited. She knew this was the moment when the past and present collided, a secret that could destroy everything, or, if uncovered, could finally set her free. The night was thick with suspense. The future was uncertain. But one thing was clear: Grace would no longer be powerless. The sun dipped low, casting long orange shadows across the village. Grace and Daniel knew it was time. The letter, the hidden watcher, and the whispered threats all led to this moment. They had to confront her stepmother and the secrets that had haunted Grace for years. Grace's heart thumped wildly in her chest. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes burned with determination. She would not allow fear to rule her any longer. Daniel walked beside her, his grip firm around her hand. Whatever happens, I'm with you, he said softly. Grace nodded. Together they approached the small, weathered house at the edge of the village, the home where so many of Grace's nightmares had begun. Inside, her stepmother was waiting, her face a mask of fury and surprise. Grace, she spat, eyes blazing. You dare show your face here? Grace stood tall, ignoring the fear clawing at her insides. I'm done hiding, she said steadily. I know your secrets, and I won't let you control my life anymore. Her stepmother's face twisted, rage and panic intermingling. You think you can defy me after everything I've done? Grace's expression hardened. Yes, she replied. After everything you've done, I choose freedom. I choose love. I choose my life. Daniel stepped forward, his voice firm. Leave her alone. You have no power over her anymore. Her stepmother glared, but for the first time she felt the weight of isolation. The villagers had begun to gather outside, drawn by the confrontation. Whispers filled the air. She's brave. She's finally standing up to her. Grace's stepmother faltered, realizing she had no allies. Her own cruelty and manipulation had turned the village against her. Grace took a deep breath, feeling a wave of release and empowerment. Your reign of fear ends today, Grace said, her voice steady. Her stepmother shrank back, finally silent, as Daniel squeezed Grace's hand reassuringly. For the first time, Grace felt the full weight of liberation freedom earned, threats confronted, love affirmed. That night, under the soft glow of moonlight, Grace and Daniel walked home together. The confrontation was over. But more than that, it marked the triumph of courage, love, and justice over fear. The morning sun rose gently over the village, painting golden hues across the dusty paths. Grace sat quietly in her home, cradling her small child. A symbol of the life she had fought so hard to build, Daniel prepared breakfast, glancing at Grace with a tender smile. Everything felt peaceful, yet Grace knew that true peace required one final step. Word had spread. Her stepmother was gravely ill, alone, and with no one to care for her. The villagers whispered of her condition, some still fearful, others curious. Grace felt a tug at her heart, a mixture of sadness, anger, and compassion. That afternoon, Grace walked to her stepmother's home, Daniel at her side. The once cruel woman lay frail, her skin pale, body weakened by sickness. Her eyes widened in recognition, fear and remorse mingling in her gaze. Grace, I am sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "For all I have done, I was wrong." Grace knelt beside her, heart pounding. Tears welled in her eyes, not for the pain she had endured, but for the healing that forgiveness could bring. "I forgive you," Grace said softly. "Not for you, but for me. I cannot let anger steal my peace." Her stepmother reached out a trembling hand, grasping Grace's. The villagers who had watched from outside began to nod in approval, seeing the power of Grace's mercy. Daniel wrapped an arm around her waist, proud and supportive. Grace's child cooed in her arms, a living testament to love, hope, and new beginnings. Days passed, the stepmother's condition worsened, and eventually she passed away. Yet even in death, Grace's choice to forgive remained a beacon of compassion, showing the village that strength comes not only from courage, but from mercy. Grace returned home with Daniel, stepping into a life filled with love, laughter, and hope. Their child played in the yard, the sun casting warm light across the small home. Grace reflected on her journey from orphaned suffering, cruelty, and fear to love, freedom, and moral triumph. She had faced darkness and chosen light, courage, and forgiveness, fulfilling her destiny. That evening, as the sun set, Grace held Daniel's hand, whispering, "We've finally arrived, and nothing can take this away." Daniel kissed her forehead, and together they watched the sky, their hearts full, their future bright, and their souls at peace.
Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear from your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.